Jay, I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to hurt you. Okay, someone did this to me too. Okay?
Who did it to you?
I met a girl at a bar. It was a one-night stand. I don't even remember her name. I think that's where it came from.
It Follows is a 2014 American supernatural psychological horror film written and directed by David Robert Mitchell, starring Micah Monroe, Keir Gilchrist, and Daniel Zavato. Welcome back to the Cult of Films. I'm John, the host, and it must be sweater weather because it is time to talk about spooky movies again, and I am so happy to finally be talking about one of my personal favorite, I guess, new cult classics, It Follows, from filmmaker David Robert Mitchell. He wrote and directed this. This is the middle child of his 3-film filmography. I'm super impressed that I got that one out. I actually heard people talking about his third film, Under the Silver Lake, and it was kind of this like a speakeasy kind of film that like no one watched and no one really liked except me and like a handful of people.
All right, come on, let's go. What the hell, man?
It Follows is his second film. I think this came in at a budget about $1.3 million, and it made $23.3 million. So, you know, it more than quadrupled its budget and then some. It's not like it made a ton of money. I mean, $23 million, but off of like a shoestring budget, he was able to accomplish with the cast he did and the effects they did, with how this movie looked and the feel and the mood and the score. This was probably one of the better successes of the last like 10 years. I bet you could lump this in the kind of renaissance of the elevated horror genre. Other films like Lights Out and Don't Breathe, this kind of slots right in there, where people were kind of craving a different kind of horror. I think the slasher was kind of dying off in the early 2000s, and then we had this whole, you know, almost decade long of like supernatural films that were kind of taking over, culminating with the never-ending slog that was the Paranormal Activity films. The franchise was a necessary evil because it kind of forced, you know, the audiences and then the transfer of that, the studio having to kind of think, what else can we do? And, you know, that's when we got more of that smarter kind of twists on horror films. And It Follows was definitely one of the trailblazers of this and all the Mike Flanagan, you know, films and series that came out. So it still had a supernatural quality to it, but especially this film had like a slasher cast, because it looks like it's a bunch of kids and teenagers that you'd see right out of a Friday the 13th movie, but it's so much more real than that. I mean, in the first 10 minutes of the film, you get one of the teenage girls just ripping a fart right in the middle of the living room, like a packed living room.
What?
He got away.
Some of them work in like fast food. You get up close and personal. Everyone looks greasy and hot and sweaty. No one is overtly glamorous in this film. I mean, you get a close-up of one of the kids like cutting her toenails in the bathroom, but that's great because it sets up like a realism to this, because building this very relatable world in like the middle of rundown Detroit, where it's literally like the city blocks run right up to like a bunch of abandoned houses because of you know, it's Detroit. That setting kind of lends itself to almost like this fishbowl setting, where it's like these kids are constantly having to try to escape, and the furthest they get to go is the beach. So it almost has that like Dark City vibe to it. Far out as they drive, it's just like desolation and rundown houses, and the very edge of the world is like the beach. And even though our cast is traveling like miles and miles at a time, it has this like claustrophobic feel to it, especially when you get in the houses, because you never want to wind up somewhere with only one exit.
See? Everything's okay.
let's talk about what It Follows is about. And what is it? Who fucking cares? That's the best part of it. Is very reminiscent to an It. We could play a drinking game. Every time I say the word It, take a drink and you'll probably be as dead as most of the teens in this movie. So the film opens up with this young girl named Annie running around the neighborhood with her dad coming out to check up on her, very clearly running away for something, and it's revealed pretty quickly and pretty gruesomely what that thing is. The most effective things about this film, while being very economically shot, is most, if not all, of the horror happens off screen, or you get to see the anticipation of it, and then, you know, a second later you see the aftermath, and your mind just kind of fills in the blanks. The one time that they actually do show the act of, like, the murder, I guess, was one of the least effective parts of the movie, although it's super disturbing. And I guess if you guys are really fucking sick, I guess we could get into that later. But we shift to our main character, Jamie, who goes by Jay. And Jay is a young woman that it looks to be about college age, maybe like a freshman year of college, who has a younger sister. And they have like a little group of friends. They have teenage conversations, and they worry about, you know, young adult things.
Seemed like something was on his mind. Have you... No. No. I know he wants to, but... I don't know, it seemed different last night.
Very real life, this doesn't feel like I Know What You Did Last Summer. Nothing is like super over the top, or it feels like it's written by a boardroom. It's like when you walked into your friend's house and you just started talking, you plopped down on the couch, you started talking and farting and picking your own toenails. Like, it feels very lived in. It feels very relatable. So Jay and her boyfriend decide to kind of culminate this new budding relationship. That's when shit kind of hits the fan. That's when we're introduced to what, you know, the character of It, and what It is some kind of entity, supernatural or otherwise, some kind of force of nature that can take the shape of pretty much anybody, and it follows you as soon as you have sex with whoever contracted it last. So it's literally the worst relay race you could be a part of. The boyfriend explains to her that she needs to pass this burden on to someone else by having sex with another person, and then it will follow, you know, that person. But the problem is that if she dies, then it starts coming back after the boyfriend, and then it kind of works its way back up through the chain. So even if you do your duty and, you know, pass along this wonderful gift to someone else, if that person dies before passing it on to someone else, then it will just kind of reverse through the cycle again. And this is one of the most successful parts of this film, and why it's so effective. Really jump scary, but there are some jump scares and effective jump scares in there. There's one cheap one that it did get me, and I thought it was pretty funny. Those little, like, cheap ones are earned because of how smart and tension-filled the rest of the film is. This film is the slowest of burns, and they're constantly talking about that and explaining how whatever it is it just walks, and it's always going to walk in the direction of the person that it's focusing on until it's eliminated, and then it moves on to the next thing. This creature does kind of feel like a homage to one of those Stephen King type characters. It feels kind of like It, you know, aka Pennywise the Dancing Clown, where that monster kind of feeds off the fears of children and people before, you know, psychically eating them, where this one kind of like, it's like in the extended universe, right? This one feeds off of lust and love and passion and emotion. It could be right down the street from you. You could jump in a car and drive an hour away. It's going to take probably a good 3 hours to walk to wherever you are now. It always knows where you are, no matter where so there's no hiding from it, and it could always try to break into things, although it doesn't have like supernatural, like, big bad wolf powers. It's not huffing puffing and you know, laser beaming through walls or anything like that. It's not the fucking Kool-Aid Man. Oh yeah. It will use any means necessary to try to get in, whether it be dressing up like someone that you would least expect, like when she's at school and it starts following her as a elderly woman, or she's just like, that's weird. Like, should I ask this person for help? Like, it plays on your kind of emotions and your instincts to be like, oh, you know, there's an elderly person that's wandered away from some hospital or something. Maybe I should help this lady find her way back. No, you're fucking dead now. Or it will take the shape of people that you know or people that are in your life. So it kind of lets your guard down that way. And then it takes the form of just like random ass people, like some forms in here, like the tall man, which kind of made me think of Haunting a Hill House with the tall man with the boiler hat on. It's not explained that if Jay knows who this like giant tall man is walking after her, or if it's just a random person like the old lady was. It's just always taking different shapes and not always makes it personal to that person. So it is always throwing you off that way. One of the closest calls is they drive all the way out to a beach, and it's like, I think days later, maybe a day later, until it finally walks up on the beach. So they can kind of blend right in. You know, there's only 5 of them that are hanging out, and obviously they would know, oh, that's not one of us. But it's not always, it doesn't always look scary. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it looks like a weird rat child or something with like, you know, hollowed out eyes or something, or a lady, or it's always like a naked lady, an older naked lady for some reason. That's like pissing on your floor. And the other effective thing about it is the timing of it, is because you're lulled into a sense of, am I really being followed? Of course, this is crazy. Is this thing actually coming for me? And then you kind of let your guard down, because they drove out to the beach and probably showed up, you know, a day or 2 later. They're all just sitting by the beach. She's just like, oh, finally a moment to relax. I have my, you know, my back. She should have had her back to the water, but maybe it would have came up as a fucking dolphin or something. That would have been really funny. But it didn't. Her back was to the walkway, unfortunately. And, you know, it was able to like get at her through her hair. So it is a tangible thing. It's a corporeal thing, because it is able to affect the real world also. So it not only could harm and kill, have sex with the victim that it's going after, but also can, if other people are jumping in the way, even though it's invisible to those people, it throws her friend across the beach. It knocks a hole in this like door that it's trying to break in. So it does seem like it does have some supernatural strength to it, although it just looks like a normal person. And it also has some kind of weird, I don't know if it's regenerative properties. And I like the way the filmmaker executed that, is sometimes they're able to kind of pinpoint where this thing is. The friends that can't see it, and they just like shoot it right in the head, and you see blood splatter everywhere, and it falls to the ground, but then it just kind of jumps right back up. So it's this weird like ghost echo thing, but also like half tangible to anyone that has this like specific curse or whatever. And that's the beauty of it. It's never spelled out. You never get to know, but it does have to abide by the rules that the movie has kind of laid out for it.
Never go into a place that doesn't have more than one exit. It's very slow, but it's not done.
It's almost like this fucked up game where you know how to beat it. You know what you need to do to kind of either shed it off you for the time being, or just to escape it. It feels like a zombie apocalypse for one. It's that inevitability where a zombie itself isn't inherently scary. It's the entire horde and the fact that there's always more coming. It's also very effective how he shoots this film too, with this kind of tension, because there are so many dolly tracking shots, and the camera kind of swoops around corners and a lot of pull-ins and a lot of pull-outs. What this monster is, it's effectively a fucking Sam Raimi Jammo cam, except not, you know, so frenetic. It's this slow plotting thing. When it shows our group like kind of hanging out or doing whatever, and then you see like the camera kind of slowly pull in. You don't know if it's the actual thing that's following them, or if it's just the slow camera work. And the cinematographer really does a good job of lending his style to the kind of overall tone and mood of the film. And talk about the tone, Music by Disaster Piece is an entirely different character onto itself. Like, it has that wonderful like dark synth wave that was just so very prominent with all these horror movies, but especially with this film, it's out of the way, but also like a nice like ticking clock in itself that's moving the story along. Because what you're looking at, constantly in a car, and you're just like looking at roads, and like he just puts the camera on like the hood of a car and just goes, and you're just like driving through like old rundown like Detroit neighborhoods. Have that little bit of like etherealness of like that synth wave that just kind of cuts in the realism. It kind of sells that like dreamlike quality to it. As far as the interpretations of this film goes, I mean, it's been said to death, especially since this film has been out for a while now, since 2014. Everyone's like, oh, it's AIDS. It's about AIDS. It's all an allegory for AIDS or other STDs or whatever. Yeah, you could definitely say that, but it's not something you feel the need to have to solve, because there is no real resolution to this. You know what they have to do, they do it, and then they kind of move on, and then they kind of hold their breath until it eventually comes back. It's all just biding more time. They're never able to permanently get rid of this thing. That's a reason why I hope they don't do a sequel of this, because I could see something stupid like, we're gonna go backwards and find out who started this and what the origin of it is so we could totally break from the cycle and the curse. I don't want to see any of that shit. I like how loosey-goosey it is. I like the fact that these people, like, the very end shot, and of course spoilers, our two main characters like walking down a sidewalk hand in hand, like looking at each other, finally like able to smile, and not even smile because they beat it, just smile because they've kind of found rediscovered their feelings for each other during this whole thing, and they're both afflicted by this, and they both probably will die from this thing in the end. It's that shadow of inevitability that not just is going to kill these characters, but it's going to come for us all. I mean, it's if anything, it's an allegory on mortality itself. Yeah, you could try to eat well, you could exercise, you could fall in love, you could do all these things that feel like you're prolonging your life, but in the end, it's all finite anyways. And so just for that little moment at the end of them just kind of smiling at each other and just kind of like, hey, this is our life now, this is what it is, but at least we have each other, is actually a really beautiful bow to put on this fucking thing. As far as like Lights Out or Don't Breathe or any of these other, I think that It Follows is just a cut above, at least for me. I think it was beautifully shot. The score is fantastic. The acting is, I think, probably better than any other like teenage slasher ensemble cast. I think they all do a fantastic job. Keir Gilchrist puts in a very underrated performance in this as well. A lot of accolades should, and I think did, were given to Maika Monroe, and she's been in other films that I love, Hot Summer Nights, and of course one of my other favorite films that I guess no one else really tends to agree with me on, in The Guest. She is great in this. She has so much to do. She was excellent, but I think Keir Gilchrist was awesome as well. It was interesting watching him in this film after watching 3 seasons of him starring in Atypical. As you could tell, I recommend the shit out of this movie. I think it's fantastic. I think it's great for Halloween. It feels like a good turn of the leaves, like a good like beginning of fall movie, because it's not one of those like, it doesn't feel like super cold, like they're still at the beach, but it just feels like you want to put on a sweater during this film, because everything's just so overcast and wonderful. Grab some coffee, grab some rum, throw those two together and watch It Follows. You could follow me over to Twitter at The Cult of Films. You could also follow me at John the Host. Thanks for hanging out with me today, and I'll see you in the parking lot.